Let's face it, sales can be very precarious depending on the products you go with, how you handle customers, and most importantly, how you navigate difficult conversations. After all, the goal is to ensure a collaborative rather than a combative atmosphere. And let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because by sharpening a handful of skills, you can come prepared for any negotiation process and arrive at an equitable outcome. My guest tells me preparation is the difference maker, and with a well thought out strategy, you not only help yourself, you signal to the customer that you respect their time and value their business.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jolles.
Today's guest, Fabiana Lacerca Allen, has more than 30 years of experience in developing and implementing global compliance programs within Fortune 100 companies. She has extensive experience leading global teams in negotiating, implementing, and executing on corporate integrity agreements, deferred prosecution agreements, and consent decrees. Her new book is Crisis Capable: Building Your Capacity to Survive and Succeed in Every Environment. That is a tall order. All right. Well, welcome to the show and happy to have you with us, Fabiana.
Thank you, Rob. It's so good to be here.
Good. Well, I'm cooling down. I'm not sweating as much because I was really working on that name before we went live. I think I pulled it off. Okay.
You did pretty good,
Yay.
I have to say.
Yay for me. Well, it is a pleasure to have you here. So let's dive right in. And I want to start by looking at some skills you say will allow us to come prepared for any negotiation process. I know you're going to have to cherry pick because I'm probably asking for half the book there, but give me a skill or two that maybe some people would not instinctively think about.
Be prepared. And I know that that's very basic, Rob, but as I've done this internationally many, many, many times over, you realize that a lot of people go with that ignorance of what they're getting into. From the country to the culture to who you're going to face, to what the real issues are, to an understanding of what's important to the other party. And more importantly, to an understanding what's really important to you. Um, I've done this and I have some great stories of people not even knowing that, there are certain countries you greet people with a kiss. And I'll tell you something. So I was born and raised in Argentina. I'm an American and I lived in this country 32 years now. And I still marvel at some of the differences. So in Argentina, which is a very classist society, very hierarchical, when you want to make people comfortable or when you want to, tell them basically it's okay, make them at ease, you kiss them hello, cheek, you kiss them hello.
Mhm.
Now, if I want to make a distance and I want to basically send a message that, you don't belong in my category, so opposing counsel or adversarial relationship, I would shake their hands. And so if you don't know that difference and you're looking at me shaking somebody's hands, it'd be with a smile, it'd be professional, but the other person would definitely get the message. So if you're not understanding what's happening in front of you, you can never be effective. And many cultures have different ways of addressing this. Um, and it's funny because my husband, who was born and raised in the US, when we go to Argentina, goes, "Is this a kiss or not kiss?" Because he still, after 20 years, cannot understand the difference because they're very, very subtle.
Right.
And so I always laugh, is this a kiss or not kiss situation? And, he's kissed the plumber, and that's fine. And he's not kissed an aunt. That's different. So it takes time and it takes a lot of understanding to get it right. And with the same with every single culture. In Argentina, for example, and this is something that a lot of people have trouble with, nobody's going to start a conversation with what's serious, Rob. It's going to be like, oh, well, talk about the family, talk about the kids, talk about the weather. How did you get there? And all of those things. There's a social aspect of it. And so having a thorough understanding of what you're going to face and who's going to be there is key, to the point that many times during interviews in the US, you see people that don't even know what you've done. I mean, like, come on, LinkedIn guys, just do the minimum, the very minimum. Who are your connections? What kind of extracurricular things they like? They play basketball. They like, you have to have that. It shows respect. It shows interest. Not many people do that.
Yeah, well, let's stay here for a second. So, you're right. Cross culturally, it's a whole different thing. For instance, when you were just saying that, we have to start things a little more social. Here in this country, we do if we're talking to a social individual. But if we're
Correct.
talking to a dominant individual, it's almost annoying. So it's a little harder here where we actually have to read the personality. It's not necessarily a culture. But in Argentina, you're telling me that it's more cultural than personality. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that's where my second skill set comes in play, which is emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
It's understanding what your strengths are and what your areas of opportunity, but it's also understanding how you're being perceived.
Right.
You don't want to offend people. You don't want to um, make them uncomfortable. You don't want to show too strong, but you don't want to show too weak either. And that is gauging and an understanding of the environment that needs to be readjusted very fast, very carefully, very tactfully, very gracefully. And so if you don't get that right, then it doesn't matter. And this is something that you start learning at a very young age, Bob. I'm gonna say that you've seen this before, Rob. I don't know if you have kids or not, but my kids have learned. Me too.
We just
They've
we're
learned,
just flashing three fingers at each other, everybody. Okay.
and the right fingers. Let's just make
That's
sure
right.
that
All
everybody
three of them.
understands. Um, they learn really fast how to ask and who to ask.
Hmm. Right.
My kids are very young age. They learn that if I speak to me in Spanish, I'm more prone to say yes because I recognize the effort and it's unconscious, but I like it when they recognize this is important to mom, let me try. Now, it only happens when they want something, so I got hip to it. But the truth is, they're learning. They're learning that this is important in this environment. This is good. Um, my husband is a West Point grad, so he likes more the be straight, be honest, be to the point.
Right.
So they know exactly how to address him.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense. I actually just released an article today on LinkedIn, just talking about personality models. And my argument for years, I couldn't stand them, particularly as sales models. Like, you learn your personality, you're a better salesperson. No, you're not. This personality model is helping my manager manage me more effectively. But unless I sell me for the rest of my life, I don't understand what I'm learning here. Until we realize that they are effective, we just have to stop focusing on ourselves. In sales, we're more like chameleons and figure out, okay, that person in front of you, as long as they're not from Argentina. Now I know I've already got a head start from Argentina,
You need to
but
call me Rob if that's the case.
that's right. But it's a matter of reading those personalities. My question to you is this, though. Let's stay in the U.S. now. And
Yep.
I love the fact, and we can't say it enough. Social media is fun and wonderful, and have a great time, everybody. But if you're in business, you really have to be paying attention to LinkedIn. Okay, I'm with you. That's where I'm going to do a lot of my research. Any other thoughts, though? Let's push LinkedIn aside of how I can prepare myself, particularly for a negotiation, because that's a little bit different than sales. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. Any other resources or thoughts or ideas other than your book, which I'm assuming
Good.
I'll learn from? Yes.
Yes. Or give me a call. But no, I mean, truly, the Rob, I would Google a person.
Mm,
So I'll find out from LinkedIn, for example, Rob likes basketball. Okay, I'm gonna learn where you went or what's your team? I'm going to learn about you as much as I can. Because if I learn from you and I learn what triggers you and I learn what's important to you, then a very successful negotiation, Rob, is one where everybody wins.
Yeah.
In any relationship, from friendship to lovers to business, if one holds all the power, it ends up corrupting the relationship. It's never a good ending. It can last 1 month, 10 years. Eventually, the disparage of power breaks relationships up. So if you're going to start from that basis and you want to make this work, you need to think long term. And what makes long term work is that understanding that we're going to trust each other, we're going to be loyal to each other, we're going to be open to each other, we're going to be vulnerable for each other with each other eventually. And we're going to do what's best for both of us and for whoever else we're serving. And so when you have that open and transparent conversation and you come that way, people are more prone to be open to you and work with you that way.
Yeah. Just curious. Did you pull basketball out of thin air or did you actually Google me?
I Googled you. I told you I do my.
Okay. Well, she hit it because I happen to be played it at a fairly high level, coached it, love it, and bingo. So
I
she's
know.
practicing what she's preaching. Yeah.
And by the way, so has my brother-in-law, Greg Foster.
Oh, correct. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, he used to play with the Lakers. He had a very long NBA career.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, how you like
So,
that? Yeah,
so
if you
I
threw a
do my
Wizards guy at me, I'd get him right out of the gate. But I'm not a Lakers
so
expert, although I know the name sounded familiar.
yes, and he actually kind of looks like you.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
very this is
Very good
very
looking man,
interesting. Very good
apparently.
looking man for sure. 6'11".
Yeah, I'm in the ballpark of 6'11 minus a foot or so. All right, let's keep rolling. That sometimes things just don't go as planned. I mean, we go in there, and I love the fact that you said, we're looking for a win-win. We're always going for a win-win. I find a win-win sometimes almost like a unicorn in business. It's there. I can't wait. For example, I frequently fall into a lose-win where, and that just fits my personality and my profession. Of sometimes you have to see what we can do before you can commit to what we do. So if we lose that first one, I'll work it at your number. And then if I exceed expectations, you come to my number. That works for me.
But
Am I
that's
on
to
track?
me,
Yeah.
you're exactly correct, Rob, and that's a win-win. It
Mm,
all depends on how you define it. To me, it's so interesting the way that kids are raised in this country. My three kids were born here and raised here. So I say that with love. But, they're raised with an understanding that United States come first and everything else is secondary. It's interesting because in the business meetings, you hear the US and then rest of the world, like you all out there. And it's interesting because that creates a real ignorance in some cases of what's out there. I cannot tell you how many times people go, wow, you look like us. And I'm like, really?
ooh,
You
oof.
know,
Yeah.
or your English is very good. And I was like, I went to UCLA law school here, so I hope it is. And when they hear you speak another language and I speak five, they're like, oh, do your kids understand? And I'm like, no, no, no. If I speak funny, they go get their coats. I go, of course they understand. I mean, but that's in negotiations, you cannot afford that. You need to come humble. You need to come prepared. You need to come for a win win. And a win win, it's also defined differently. A win win is sometimes you take a step back in something that it's not as important to you to take two steps forward later. But again, remember, Rob, that I said we're looking at this long term.
Yeah.
So if you're going to build a relationship long term, that doesn't mean that all of what's important to you is going to be met immediately.
Yeah. All right. Let me throw just a weird one at you. Real estate. I've always struggled with this because, here I'm, writing books and time, looking for win-wins and, and kumbaya. And yet in real estate, when I'm selling a home, I'm not telling my realtor, boy, I'm obsessing on a win-win right now. If somebody doesn't want to buy my home at the number we have out there, tell them don't buy it then. But I'm not necessarily obsessing with. I want to feel good and I want them to feel good. No, I want to sell my house. Now in business, completely different. But real estate is business. Am I a bad guy? I mean, you follow where I'm coming from. I'm just.
No, it means you have different priorities, Rob, and you have
Uh-huh.
to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Everybody has a number and everybody has a reason why they're selling or not selling the house.
Mm.
If you ask me, for example, to sell the house, I grew up in Argentina. I can tell you right now, you cannot afford it. And it's not a number issue at all. It's because it has memories, intangibles, things that I experienced there that I cannot experience anybody else. And there's no price for that. So we would never agree on a number. Now, if you like my house here in San Francisco and you really like it, we can talk about it.
Right. Okay. Uh, I hear you. And oh, by the way, sometimes it depends on is it a buyer's market or a seller's market. But if it's a
Absolutely.
seller's market, I'm just, don't get me wrong, not unethical, not looking to fool someone. I'm just not necessarily going, well, let's drop it more because I want them to feel better about this purchase. That's not in my
But that's not a
wheelhouse.
priority, and
Hmm.
that's not what you're here for. And
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely transparent.
Mm.
I mean, that's what I would tell my realtor. That's what I would tell anybody I'm doing business with. Look, I want to be fair. I understand where the market is. This is the number I will not move from. And that's actually very respectful, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I feel better about me. Thank you for that therapy session. Well, you know what? I'm really open on this podcast, and so not everybody will look you in the eye and say, I don't care about the buyer. I do. I'm not trying to hide things. I'm just everywhere else in business. I really get the concept of win-win in certain situations, even maybe at a car dealership. I'm not obsessed with having the car dealership feel they won too. I'm
Well,
trying to win.
well, the thing is, it depends on how bad you want it,
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
Um, Cars, for example, I always do very good because I really don't care.
Right.
And so I'm willing to walk away with no second thoughts. Like, oh, it's not the day.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, I have an interesting story. So we have a house in Tahoe. We drove the Tesla there. The Tesla broke down. I had no way of coming back, and I had a meeting I had to be back for. No Uber, there's snowstorm, and I had to buy a car for our youngest daughter, who was 16 at the time, and it all was perfect in that I called Mercedes-Benz. I said, what do you have used car that you can bring to me in the next hour? And that's how I bought a car, Rob. And my kids go, well, you paid a little bit more. I go, yeah, well, the circumstances was A, I needed a car. Second, I needed somebody to bring it to me. Third, it had to be done right away. There's a price for that.
Right. Well, yeah, that's well said, by the way, because you're right. Your criteria is stacked a little bit differently than
Yeah.
a normal purchase. Let's go I'm going to throw something at you now and I don't want it to be insulting, but it's sort of the way I feel in sales, and how we kind of mesh negotiation in. I feel, and you can, like I said, take pot shots out of this to be like, I always feel that when you sell well, you don't really have to you don't have to obsess on negotiation. When you don't sell well, in other words, the absence of value, price is always the most important criteria. In other words, I haven't created enough urgency. You had urgency for that Mercedes Benz. The Car dealership didn't create it, but it was created. If a salesperson can create urgency and take that item and say, this isn't a nice to have, this is a need to have, and you came up with that thought, not me, then you see that we, in a sense, strengthen our negotiation position. So I don't really have to battle price a whole lot. How am I doing?
You're doing pretty good. The thing is, you're not taking into consideration that the
Mhm.
circumstances change.
Mm,
So your rule doesn't always apply.
okay.
Because the next time I bought a car, I did not need Mercedes and I did not need the time. And so the price changed, my demeanor changed, my willingness to walk changed.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that I would even go further to say, what I don't like is that you defined as salespeople. I think that in a way, we're all salespeople because we're selling ideas, we're pushing ideas, we are trying to convince other people that our position is stronger, wiser, better. And I think you're not good or bad. You're more successful or not. And it depends on personality, how trustworthy you are.
Yeah.
My kids used to say when they were young, um, if mommy says it'll happen, it'll happen. That's better than getting a bank letter right there. And so if you can create that about you, and you are good to your word, I think that success is going to come your way no matter what.
Right. And don't get me wrong, by the way, it doesn't mean that, well, now that, we've created a super salesperson, you can get away with anything you want to get away with. No,
No,
no, no. I'm not looking for a win lose. Okay.
correct.
I used to I have a simulation at Xerox that we ran where it was involved, and I won't go through the whole thing, but there were some mechanics in there that would allow for a win lose circumstance. And one group could win and win money and all sorts of things. But when we brought them back, we said, okay, well, you achieved the objective. You did all this. I'm just curious that the other group, would you ever do business with them again? Ever? And they said, not only would we not do business, we would tell any human being that we ever came across about our experience. So who won there just now?
And that's about respect. That's about transparency. That's about integrity. And I'll tell you another funny story. So I wanted to buy an ATV for Tahoe. Now, I'm not very good, not very expert. I did my research and I talked to this amazing salesperson. And why do I say amazing salesperson? Because he knew more than me. So he was better prepared than me. And he goes, well, have you considered? I would go with a little higher um, motor, bigger one, because you can use it to push snow around. And I'm like thinking, oh, that's great. Can you clean my driveway in that ATV? That's excellent. So I went for the bigger one. And Max, my older son, laughed. He goes, Mom, that shows that you were not well prepared for this negotiation. Can you see yourself cleaning the driveway? And I said, actually, no. But maybe somebody else in the family can. And so that became the joke. I'm like, I let him win this one. It's not going to hurt me. It's in within what I was wanting to spend, and it has more applications than I thought. You know, Truth is, I've never cleaned the driveway with it. So sometimes you win or lose, but the next time we already have an open and transparent discussion. And anytime I need anything, I'll go to them.
Right. 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 I agree with you. I just want to impress upon the point we're both making, which is that this win lose kind of worries me because sometimes we are in a position where we've got somebody on the side of the road who needs a Mercedes Benz, all of what you described. And we want to make sure there isn't a corrupt smile that comes across her face and says, I can get away with this. You can. She's going to get you got her. But you've lost so much business from this. And we have to remind people that just because you can do it doesn't mean you want to execute something like that.
No, and people like you and I, Rob, I definitely talked about me. I would definitely let people know about a bad situation. I'm not going to stay shy. I'm
Right.
going to be loud and clear. I'm going to let the person know. I'm going to let the manager know. I'm probably going to write a letter about it. You can take advantage of a person once, but that's not a way to go about in life, because I always say, if you don't treat people with dignity and respect on your way up, you're going to see them again on your way down. Life has a way of teaching you that everything that goes up comes down at one point.
Yeah.
And so, with that in mind, treat others like you want to be treated, and respect and transparency and honesty is important. If you violate that, you just ended a very valuable relationship.
Yeah. Well, the book's called Crisis Capable, Building Your Capacity to Survive and Succeed in Every Environment. Let's check that. How's it doing on Amazon?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
It just, it was
Came out
published
in October, right?
in October, so
Yeah.
it's new. So I'm hoping that over the holidays, people want to buy it, want to think about it, want to discuss it, want to LinkedIn with me and tell me their thoughts. But these are all great lessons growing up that if somebody would have shared with me in my journey in corporate America, I would have had less sleepless nights, less worries, less anxiety about everything that was happening around me.
Yeah. Do you conduct seminars, keynotes, workshops on this?
Yes, yes.
Let's go to the workshop side. You're dealing with a guy who loves workshops. Okay. So I got the keynote. That's really, we can only
Yeah.
involve the audience so much, but in a workshop, now we can roll up our sleeves and not just hear it, do it. Are there simulations, case studies? I mean, how do you, because negotiations are the kind of thing that looks good on paper until somebody pushes you in the back.
Yes.
And we want that.
So the workshops I conducted that relate to the work are not necessarily related to negotiation, but related to understanding your environment, which is
Mm,
also a very important aspect of negotiation. But
okay.
observational skills, we are not taught at a very young age to be looking around and looking at our surroundings and understanding what it means. So, one of these workshops that I've done is I took a team to a restaurant and somebody was going to come in and take a purse out of, one of the, and people had to be able to describe him, what time, what happened, what was the build. And it was a very busy restaurant. Obviously, we had coordinated with the police, with the restaurant, so we were in a separate room, and it was one of those where you serve yourself the salad, so people would be up and in and out. And we hired somebody that obviously did not belong, hoodie, not dressed business like, would come in and grab a purse and go, and people had to describe them. And then the workshop is about observational skills and how do you develop them and what do you do and what are the and it was interesting because the least expected person is the one that ran after the guy,
Hmm.
and nobody else could describe it. Nobody else could tell you if it was a female or a male, or 6 foot or 5'2". It was amazing because people are not expected, are not raised to pay attention to their environment.
Yeah.
Somebody else is going to do it for them somehow. I don't know.
Yeah.
Where I grew up, who's coming in, who's going out. They belong, they don't belong. They're dressed appropriately or not immediately. It's second nature. And so those are the workshops I've done, Rob, and they've been very successful.
Yeah. I see. I love activities like that where we don't really know what the outcome's going to be necessarily. Believe it or not, I remember when I was a little boy. I mean, I was probably 10 years old, but my dad used to teach scout leaders, and he had this huge course that he put them on, and there were 10 stations, whatever, and they were being timed, and it was very meticulous, and they had to do certain things. But the last thing they did, and I watched it as a 10-year-old, is they had this old man who was the cook, okay, come through the bushes right before they would come over the hill, each team, with all sorts of pots, pans, dropping some, and they practically ran him over. I mean, like, and the maximum points in this whole thing was, would you stop and help this man who is struggling? And I can't tell you, it was about 2% of the groups would stop. The others would practice, and it was intentional. He was right in their way. They would just shove him out of the way, step on his pants, knock his things over. Didn't matter. But that's what I love about simulations, about think case studies that say, we've learned, but we could keep talking about this. Let's just get engaged in some of this and see what your reaction is.
I cannot tell you, Rob, how many times we've done those.
Mm.
Different types. One time, we were telling people that if something's out of the ordinary, it should call your attention. Something's off, something's off. We were developing people's intuition because there's many, many studies. The army does these, how come two soldiers stream the same way, go to Afghanistan? One perceives dangers and can tell you things like, oh, the silence was too eerie. The cat was not acting normally. And then other people don't see it. And so we were trying to explain these to a group of um, executives. And basically, my teaching was if you think you're that good looking, think twice. Nobody's going to fall in love with you instantly. Nobody's going to follow you out of love. I know you guys are all good looking, but not like that. And so we tell them the training continues. We'll talk again tomorrow morning. We send them to the room and we send a woman in a towel to knock at their door to see if they would open or not. And now, because you've traveled as much as I do, you cannot be in a towel in the corridor. I mean, if you do, you have all sorts of different problems. How can you get locked out from your room in a towel? Now, I
I've only
understand if
seen
you
it in the
get
movies, by the way. I've only seen it in the movies.
correct. So it can be that you get locked out of the room. Yes. It could be that you locked out of the room with your bathing suit and your robe going to the. But you're not going to knock at somebody else's door. You'd go back embarrassed to the lobby and say, can you please help me? But in this case, we would send a woman in a towel to knock at people's men's doors, and see what they would do. Of course, she was really good looking. You're not going to send. And so they would knock at the door and people would open the door and be busted, busted, busted. And the next morning, we had this conversation, and a guy I used to work with, I go, well, didn't it sound weird to you that a woman in a towel knocks at your door? Like, think about it. And he goes, yeah, I thought about it. It was kind of weird. But I thought I never get lucky. Maybe this is my chance. And I'm like, no, 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 wrong thought. Wrong thought. Because this is how people get in trouble, especially internationally.
Mm,
And
yeah,
I tell you, I've seen those, Rob,
yeah,
by the thousands. And
yeah,
so common sense is not that common, and intuition and emotional intelligence needs to be trained. And people need to be, what you practice is how you react. And so people need to be trained.
yeah. I hear you. So you were talking about the book title is Crisis Capable. How do we know when we're ready? I mean, what are some indicators that a sales organization may be crisis capable? This is a new topic for me in a sense, the way you're treating it.
Yes. Crisis capable, you only know when you endure the crisis and you come out on the other side stronger. So this is one of the, ones that you have to test. No other way you would truly, really know. And that's why all of the organizations that really deal with crises train, because there's so many studies about it, Rob, but if you react to an attack within certain percentage of seconds, you have the percentage, a high percentage of getting away with it. And for that, you need to be alert. For that, you need to be ready. For that, you have to have thought through what you're going to do.
Hmm.
So I used to, we just spent a month in Argentina where a lot of the attempted kidnappings, the dictatorship happened. So in the house I grew up with, and I was joking with my kids because one of the kids was sleeping in my old room. And I said, I got to tell you how many times I lay down here and practice to get out and escape. If somebody comes to the house, how do I get out? I said, now I just cannot jump that way and my big butt is going to fall on the ground. It's not going to be pretty. But I said, but I had a plan back then. And they laugh. Until you have a plan, until you practice it, until you know how you're going to react, then you never know if you're crisis capable or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And back to sales, that's one of the reasons why, for me, a good salesperson, and I learned this as an insurance salesman at age 21. And I learned it because nobody was calling me for life insurance. Okay. And that selling's not what is, it's what if. And
Yes.
when we deal with a crisis, listen, once it's happening,
Yes.
we all find religion, so to speak, but if we really believe in our solution and it can help a customer during a crisis situation, which many of our solutions can, we don't have to wait for the crisis to happen to have a conversation about it.
Absolutely. And that's how you build trust. Because, you know, one of the things that helped me come out through the crises I went through is that I came out stronger as a result because I felt that I could trust my instinct. I felt I could trust myself. It was proven, it was tested, I was good. And so having that conversation and having that conversation with your kids, for example, with your sales teams, helps people get to that feeling, which is a good one. It is, no matter how bad it is, there's always something good about it. And I'm going to grab onto that good and keep moving forward.
Right. Right. I agree. I totally agree. Well, I haven't really enjoyed the conversation, and it's interesting how you kind of weave in and out. I mean, you're not with sales teams all the time, but you have the ability to take your message and sort of apply it to different types of negotiation or selling, and I just think that's unique to say the least. So anyway, I'm thoroughly enjoying the conversation. How do people get a hold of you?
LinkedIn. There's all my information there. There's my email. There's my phone number. Send me an email. Send me a LinkedIn. Send me a WhatsApp. I always respond because one way I get better is from feedback, is from learning, is from hearing other people's experience, from hearing other people's reactions to what I say in the book.
Right. Right. Well, we're going to have your name up on the site, et cetera. But for those who are listening along and want to play this back, it's Fabiana, new word, Lacerca. I won't say that name again. And the last name Allen. So that's how we're going to find her. I reached out to you on LinkedIn today. Did you accept my invitation yet?
Not yet, but
All
I
right, well, let's
will
get to
definitely.
it. Okay. All right. Well, crisis capable, building your capacity to survive and succeed in every environment. And I just want to thank you so much for being on the show. Really enjoyed talking to you and kind of reflecting back on my Xerox days there. Anyway, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Rob. It was a true pleasure.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.